I like to get better at solving problems. I'm an engineer. I studied problem solving in school. In my day job, we use problem solving techniques to solve billion-dollar problems. Today, I'm going to use some of those same techniques to solve a problem a little closer to home. These are great tools whether you're solving a big problem or a small problem. We'll do two things in this video. One, solve my medicine cabinet organization problem. Two, get better at problem solving. Okay, you can see the problem that I've got. I don't like this support thing right here. I don't like that you have to stack and, lift each of these up and unstack them just to get to the things on the bottom. Overall, the look is messy. You can't evenly put the same type of bins across here because this just won't let you. That's the issue I'm facing. Research has shown us again and again that following a simple, systematic process can really help with our problem solving. It helps us be creative, it helps us be innovative, it helps us ultimately make better decisions. The way I like to structure it is to frame. That's where I clarify the problem, make sure I really understand the assignment. Diverge. This is where I come up with lots of different ideas, alternatives, brainstorms, etc. And then develop, decide. That helps you come up with the solution that you want. Then, of course, you need to execute that decision. Let's focus on frame, diverge, develop, and decide, and then we'll jump over to execute. So let's frame the problem. Framing the problem is understanding what you really want out of it, and it's good to write it down and be explicit. What do we really want out of this? I want it to be easy to get stuff out. I want it to look organized, easy to find stuff. So that's kind of aesthetics and easy to find things. And then ultimately, I want to better use the space. We should be able to store more stuff. It's not necessarily the main goal, but I do think that it would be nicer. So easy operation, looks nice, it's organized, and then we're better using the space. Then it's good to think about some of the other goals that you might have. I want to use my new 3D printer. A wish is to use angle iron. Just seems like a great idea to make a really thin, narrow shelf. Effort, not too much. I don't want to be doing a ton of crazy stuff on this, and as such, I don't really want to modify the cap. I feel like that is going to be beyond the scope of what I want to do, so I don't want to change out the hinges or do any edits to the cabinet itself. Looks, aesthetics, I mean, it's inside a cabinet, so I'm not too fussed, but it still needs to look like reasonably nice. When I think about maximizing, how hard I want to lean into maximizing, these hinges are sort of in the way, and also the lip of the cabinet is in the way as well. This cabinet cuts over. Obviously, there's wasted space. If I want to pull the drawer straight out, I'm going to run into that. And then these hinges stick out even further. One of my considerations, if I truly want to maximize the space, is I could do some sort of L-shaped cabinet over here and cut out a groove that would go around this. And after giving it some thought, I decided, you know what, I'm not really too worried about that. I mean, maybe it'd be nice to do those wings. My main goal is that it's easy to pull those out. Maybe later I'll want to do some sort of custom 3D cabinet. Obviously, you can't pull those out without moving some of the other shelves, but maybe I'm okay with that. But maybe I do want that optionality in the future. We'll see. One of the great tools to use when we're thinking through this is the issue tree. This is Mural that I'm using. This is free software. So there's two main things that we're trying to solve here when we do the medicine cabinet, and I would say that is the structure and then the containers themselves. Let's think about the structure first, and then we'll come back to the containers. So when I'm thinking about the structure, there's a few things. One of the considerations we already talked through a little bit is, do we want to do the wings? And by wings, I mean the pieces off to the side of the shelf, or do I want to not do the wings? Or maybe should I build the wings? I don't know, optionality for wings. Maybe I'll do them. Maybe I won't. What's another consideration? In addition to the wings, the container space. So this isn't necessarily the size I'll make the containers. Let's just think about the maximum space that container can take up right now. With the containers, I need to think about the depth and the width and the height. What else? I think the structure itself, let's just think, I know I wrote structure twice. Let's think about the shelves. I don't want anything to be stacked on top of each other. I don't want to have to move anything. I just want to be able to reach in and grab the item. And so I'm thinking about, would it be like one shelf? Would it be two shelves? That is something that I'm trying to think about. Could I do some sort of hybrid where I have like one shelf and then I split it out into two shelves? I don't know. Those are some of the things that I need to think through. All right, so that's the space. Let's say I have that shelf designed. Let's jump to containers. What are key considerations for the containers itself? Some sort of handle maybe on the container. Maybe we could do like, well, now I'm thinking through the solutions. We'll come to solutions here in a minute. So let's just think about the handle, what I want to use to pull it in and out. And then I know right now the container, if I want to go with a depth that's deeper than, if I go back up to here, Let's just think about depth for a second, a little bit deeper. On depth, my 3D printer has a limitation. It's 256 millimeters to print in the 3D. Or if I want to set my depth to be max depth, 351 millimeters. So this is the max cabinet depth. So that's something I need to think about when I think about those issues, because I know that my 3D printer cannot print the full bin as we go through here. On the width, probably need to think about how many dividers across do I want, and then height, how tall are they? Those are some of the key considerations. Now I come down to containers, think about the handle. I might need a means of connecting 3D print pieces. Let's think about the sides just a little bit. This is, see, strength, material. That's an issue tree. I like to use an issue tree to find out what the absolute key things are that I need to solve. And I take each of those, and those will be my headers to use in a morphological matrix. A morph matrix is a really powerful tool. All it is a list of the key issues that you need to solve. List those across the top, and then list down underneath them all sorts of solutions for those issues. Once you have a bunch of solutions for each subfunction, then you can create an overall system solution for the entire problem that you're having. So here I'm creating various cases, version 1, version 2, version 3, and these then combine different subfunctions into an overall solution. Now we're going to do a morph matrix. These are some of the key considerations that I thought of in the last one. We're just going to list these different options that we might select. Wings we could use, don't use, maintain optionality. The depth, as I listed before, I have this 3D printer limit, and I have the cabinet depth. Let's think about width just for a moment. You can see here I just sketched up the geometry of the cabinet, and so these are the wings. This is essentially the part that I'm going to ignore. Sadly, I'm losing that volume because just the way the cabinet is with its hinges and side pieces, but I do have an option here. So I thought, well, how wide do I really want to go? I can print some simple small organizers to go inside bins. So I'm not overly fussed on the size, but I do want a rough idea of how big I should make these. These have been more or less working, and I could fit ones about the width of this, of the top of this. I could do probably 4 across or 3 across. So I modeled that up. These 4 across are roughly the size of the bins that we're putting in right now. So if I did 3 across, this would be quite wide. This is the 3 across option, and then this is the 4 across option. And looking between the two, just kind of feels like 4 across would be a little bit better solution. Let's take a look at height. Now I can just take the total height of the cabinet and divide it evenly in half. And so if we're using 4 across, I could get 8 bins nicely in there, making sure to leave a little room for a shelf. Or I could go smaller bins, smaller height, same width, and fit 12 bins. So this would require 2 shelves to be put in here, and I could really pack things in. So I did a little bit of experimenting with the items that I had in there, and several of them were too tall for these bins. If I went in and looked, there's just a bunch of these little medicine ones, these little pill bottles. Everything else was just a little bit too tall for those three bins. So a lot of stuff would fit. Definitely couldn't stand up these bug spray and sunscreens. You'd have to lay those down with that design. But ultimately, there are quite a few things that would have to lay down, and especially ones that had liquid in them. This seemed just a little too small on the height. When thinking about that overall structure, just mock that up a little bit here so you can see the shelves. Or maybe you could do some sort of a hybrid. This one offers a lot of promise in terms of your organizational capability, because you get a little bit of the best of both worlds, where you can stand up tall items over here, but you don't have to lose some of your functionality here. Obviously, the complexity increases with this one. Now you're talking about putting a divider shelf in and 3 shelves here. And so the question is, do you really want to do that? I ran it to my official decision maker for what she wanted to do. She elected to go with this design that felt like about the right size after looking at it overall. And honestly, as much as I like this, I didn't like how many things would need to be laid down. So I agreed with this height. And honestly, keeping in mind, my original goal was to not get too carried away with the complexity on this project. The hybrid solution, maybe we rule that out just because of additional effort. And you do lose some of the space here when you start adding in dividers. You lose just some of your space. We decided to keep it simple, but is there a way that we can improve this design even better? With this design, we would still be laying over the bug spray and the sunscreen, but is there a way that we could do this more efficiently? And instead instead of just evenly dividing it, what if we took that shelf and moved it lower so that you could fit a lot of shorter items here and then a lot of taller items could stack here. The other thing that we liked about this design was with this more, post office box design, you would really depend on the labels to see what was in there. And with a little bit more relaxed constraints, you could just look over the top of the bins and see what was in the bins. I mean, we'll still use labels. This is the winning design. I need 8 bins and I need a shelf to go right here. I didn't model these up just to think through this. I did them very quickly in pencil on a piece of paper. I wanted to be able to share very clearly what I was doing here on this video. And also I wanted to get better at Fusion 360. So this is just me playing around and achieving both of those goals. Let's just talk about material for a minute. The shelf itself, we could do wood. I'd really like to use just on-hand materials. I've got some OSB. I've got some really thin plywood. I've got angle iron, as I said before. And I think that thin plywood would be way too thin if I didn't use the angle iron. I don't have 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch wood, but the angle iron with the OSB or maybe the angle iron with the thin plywood seems promising. Remember, one of my goals was to make a shelf with the angle iron. What I like about the angle iron idea, first of all, I just think it's so cool. The idea of creating this nice thin shelf, even though probably simpler and faster to do the wood, which, was one of my goals. Also, one of my goals was to try using the angle iron. And then I can just use whatever I have on hand. I could try some OSB or I could try some thin plywood. All right, let's take a look at our issues for the containers. For the containers, we had three issues, and they were the handle design, means of connecting these sides. Okay, for the handle, we could do like a notch in the top. Another thing that we could do would be an oval hole in the front. Another one would be make shorter shelves. Make shorter drawers and just grab the lip. Let's just do a little sketch here of what the heck I'm talking about. Kind of put a little notch here. There. We could do that, or just have the box, put a little oval in it. You can stick your fingers in. Or we could just make a shorter box and make sure you've got enough room to sort of put your fingers over. These are, of course, our fingers, obviously. Unmistakably fingers. You could just reach over and grab the top. Means of connecting. One way is just to go the full 256. You could just print the whole 256. And then, of course, it won't have the back end to the box. And then we could just print out another little end cap there to finish it off. On the actual joint itself, in my other video, I showed connecting some boxes together. And basically, I just have these joints and they just butt up against each other. So that's what it's called, actually. It's just a butt joint. You just push it in. I don't really like this. Can't be that. I mean, it feels pretty strong, honestly, because I'm using a really strong plastic glue. But because I have a 3D printer, I think I can get a little bit fancier. And all on that edge, I can just put a lap joint. Here's the thickness of the wall, and I'll just, on one end, I'll put this little lap, and then on the other, I'll put this little lap here. And so this is part A, and then this is part B, and I'll use a lap joint, butt joint. Notice how these bins all have holes in them on the side? So let's just say one of my designs is to throw some holes on the side. So we'll just put this in to represent holes for strength, and I guess it could help do less PLA. I don't know that this is really needed, but we can try it out. The alternative, of course, would be simply to be no holes. We've got our containers. We could do a notch in the top. We could do an oval. We could do a shorter bin and just grab it from the top. Print out the 256 millimeters here, and then finish off, put a little end cap on it. Before I decide, because I will use a 3D printer. I'm just gonna try mixing these together. I think this one makes plenty of sense. I've just got this little bit of a drop down here. I can test out, this feels a little stronger here. So I'm just gonna try this oval. I sort of have more questions in my mind about whether or not I would like this oval. And then I'll print this out on the 3D printer, and I'll try this lap joint all the way around. And then I might as well throw some holes in the side and see what that looks like. I just modeled this up in Fusion 360. Pretty straightforward to put an oval in it. I'm pretty much a novice in Fusion 360, but this was this free software that Mark Rober recommended we try out in one of the videos, and and honestly, it's been pretty awesome. I've done a little bit. If you've watched some of my first videos, you can see that I'm leveling up just a little bit on this one. All right, I drew a simple sketch, extruded it in Fusion 360, made sure that the box would fit in my printer, and then I will print this little end cap right here to clip into the back end of it. You can see I'm playing a little bit with the circles on the side. I used a tool to sort of just repeat the pattern across the side, so that was kind of neat and learning activity. This oval was pretty straightforward. Just kind of found the center point, dropped the oval in. This would be a quick test of the oval technique. And then here's where I'm getting a little fancy on my lap joint. So I take the thickness of the wall here, which is 2 millimeters thick, and then I cut it in half and create this lap joint all the way around. And you can see I've got the inverse of that over here. I've got the inverse of that over here on the side. And so this will match this side. And in theory, they should slide in perfectly together. One thing that I've done is made them a little thinner to allow for some glue to fit in here, at least on the bottom here. I just made it a little bit thinner to allow for some glue. I don't know if that's necessary or not. We'll find out when we print it and see how thick we need to make this or not. I don't know if these dimensions are too tight or not, but we'll find out. That's why this is a prototype. I threw this into Bambu Studio and printed it out on my printer. This was super helpful to have a prototype put together. I learned a lot, was able to explore the space, and made a number of decisions. This one was really close, and it was to learn from. What changes did I make? I made one, I was able to go in and test, and I changed the width of this. I changed the length just a little bit. I decided I didn't really need the holes, and maybe I'll get faster prints out of it. I don't really need the holes. And I even got rid of this handle. I don't think we really need it. We can just reach over and grab and pull. It's greatly simplified. One of the problems that I had was when I tried to join two pieces, I got really close, and you can see it's close, but I had to make a few adjustments to make that happen. One of the things I'm learning is there was a little bit of sag from here. It's a little taller here than it is here. This looked a little droopy on these holes, and honestly, I don't think this needs any sort of strength or ability to breathe. I'm just going to dispense with the holes. So it'll just be kind of a plain old box. The overlap did work pretty well, but I'm going to add just a little bit more of a gap. So I'm going to leave about a 0.6 millimeter gap. That should be about right when I print these out. But the biggest issue, while I've modeled this to be the exact same height as this, because this has this structure right here, this corner, it stayed nice and tight at the height that I wanted. But out here, it sagged a little bit. When I tried to match it up with this end cap, which was really close to this piece, when I butted that up against it, there was a little bit of a mismatch. Here's the new design. The new design, I dispense with the holes in the front and the side. I've adjusted the thickness of the overlap here. And you'll notice I cut the box perfectly in half. So I have this half, and then I've got the inverse that'll match this. And so the division will be perfectly in the middle of the box. Hopefully that should work much better. I also adjusted the width a little bit when I actually put it in the cupboard and slid it around. It just worked a little better. I found that I could make these just a little bit wider than what I had measured, so I've widened this as well. That's the advantage of a prototype. And now I just need to make 8 of these. What did we learn? We learned that we need to just divide this box up in half. So instead of doing this end cap approach, we are going to make the drawer division in the middle. Start, begin voting of the notch, the oval, and the top. We're just going to reach over the top and grab it. We can do the lap joint versus the butt joint, and we can make the drawer division in the middle rather than going 256. For the sides, we decided no holes works fine. So that is our final design. We chose to do the angle iron with either OSB or thin plywood. We can try both out. We decided to go with the 8 container and a shelf right here. Following our plan, we have framed it, we diverged on ideas, we prototyped and developed some of those ideas, and we made a decision. And now it is time to execute. This is the new updated version. I did a couple of things on it. One, I made this really thin to allow space for slight imperfections and for the glue to go. In fact, I might have gone a little too thin, so I might bring that back down just ever so slightly, but I think it'll work fine for this one. This was 1 millimeter, and I made it 0.6 millimeters. I think I'm going to make it 0.8 millimeters so that it will be just a little thinner, but not quite this thin. They do slide together really well, and so I'm sure they have sag. I haven't measured them, but now they're sagging equally, and so they slide together very nicely. It is a perfect fit. That's pretty nice. Awesome. Now it's time for the shelf. I thought I'd be okay with the look of this OSB, but the second I built it, I knew I hated it. So I'm discarding the OSB and going with this nice thin plywood. I'm figuring out the exact height of the shelf I want. One advantage of using the steel is I don't need any brackets. I can just drill holes straight into the frame. A little paint for the frame and a little paint for the wood, and we are ready to go. Well, it was definitely more work than wood and way stronger than it needs to be, but I think it looks really great. With the design locked, I went full manufacturing mode with my printer. This stuff is a lot easier than it looks. Learn how easy it is to unlock your ideas in this next video on modeling and 3D printing.